Hello, everyone. Hello, Doc. We'll just start in a second. Hello, everyone. This is Hemi Gupta, Managing Director of 𝐒𝐤𝐻𝐍, Center for Kids with Special Needs, GK2. And joining me is Dr. Naveen Mehrotra. He's the Medical Director of 𝐒𝐤𝐻𝐍 Center, GK2. And now we are on session 4 of our 6-session series, Journey of My Child, Did We Get It Right? Today's session is all about time to go to school. This series is been with a partnership with Momspresso and Ashiana Housing. It is very encouraging to see so many thousands of views, comments, shares. It just gives us a feeling that it's been helpful for you all out there. And I hope, I'm very glad that if it is. Let us straight dive into the session today. This time we have received many questions from a lot of super moms out there, which has helped us to be prepared. So please, even during the session that's going on, please feel free, parents, moms, to pour in your questions, and we will try to answer all that we can. So Dr. Naveen, how are you? You've been doing this, working with kids for the past 28 years, and you have 28 years of experience dealing with kids. So I will start my first question, which all of us have. What is a good age to send our child to school?
So thank you, Hemi, for having this topic. And I think as we look at the overall series, the journey, we've taken steps from birth on, and as the child grows, we look at different aspects in their lives. And as the child gets a little bit older, where they're becoming toddlers and parents are now looking to put their kid into school, many parents have the apprehension, is my kid ready for school? What's going to happen? And especially here in the US, when the kids start going to kindergarten, everybody on social media starts posting up their pictures of the mom going to the bus stop with their kid and crying and saying, oh, my kid is now grown up. But how do you actually get to that stage? And how do you know that is the child okay to start school? So there's, I guess if you research and if you look around, there are many different milestones that we look at. There's many different tests that are out there that say, quote unquote, school readiness. But it's not just about testing the child. It's about looking at the overall growth and development of the kid. Is the kid ready to look at or be a part of many different aspects of life? So you're looking at what's called the school readiness milestones. And those milestones are divided into separate sections. So the first part being, how is their overall development? Not just their physical growth, but their social, emotional, and behavior development. Is the child able to follow instructions? Is the child able to verbalize? Is the child able to communicate? And are they ready to be in that situation with other kids? Are they learning to take turns? Are they learning to understand what the other child has said to them? How are they reacting? So all of those steps for a parent, you should have been building up on since they were born, right? So when let's say if you have 2 kids, or if you have 3 kids, or if you have cousins that come over, how is your child interacting with the cousins? How is the child sharing? How are they actually going ahead and taking turns when you put them all on the dinner table, or when you play a game? So learning and playing those games, there's a purpose behind it. Is it that, okay, well, if you're playing snakes and ladders, all of a sudden, the child plays something, but then the other sibling jumps in, but doesn't allow the first sibling to go ahead and take the turn. So these are some of the things that we look at, right, in terms of social, emotional, and behavioral development. How are they in terms of their behavior? Are they aggressive? Are they not aggressive? So if you tell them, hey, so-and-so, you have to wait, how do they react? Because these are the type of things that they will have to deal with when they get to school. Can you imagine getting called every day from the teacher saying, oh, you know, your son did this and this, your son fought with this, your son didn't follow instructions. So the social, emotional, and behavioral development is first thing in the school readiness milestones that we look at. Then their language and literacy skills. Are they able to understand what the teacher is telling them? Are they able to verbalize? Let's say your child is not able to, put their thoughts out there. If the teacher asks a question and the child is not able to respond, the child is not going to fit into that school environment, right? So if they're out in the playground and the child is not able to express their wishes, that child will not be ready for school. So you look at their language communication skills, you look at their social skills, you look at their emotional and behavioral skills. Then you also want to look at their overall cognition. All along when we, tell parents, did you teach your child the alphabets? Did you teach them the colors? Did you teach them, basic maths? Or did you teach them, how does the animal say boo or bow bow and so on? Those are skills that we're teaching our kids because we want to make sure that the child has the proper cognition, has the proper knowledge to be able to understand and learn in an environment where they're going to be spread over with maybe other 15, 20, 30 kids, right? Here you are doing one-on-one teaching to them, but when they get into the school environment, they are going to be interacting with many different people in many different situations. So you have to look at all of those, and this is where the pediatrician comes into play. And if you have any questions, you would ask your pediatrician, is my child ready to go ahead and be in school? So this is one thing that we deal with day in, day out when the child comes in for their preschool physical, is looking at all of these aspects. And then we go ahead and provide that judgment in conjunction with the parents and tell them, yes, I think your child is ready for school. Now, just to finish up that thought, because now I think a lot of schools actually do the testing, right? So they'll go ahead and have an interview for the child. And these are some of the things that they're looking at as well, is how is the child performing on all of these domains?
And that really helps us to look at the overall before to think whether our kid is ready for school or not. A lot of parents, I guess a lot of us have a nature of thinking whether my child is ahead of the curve or behind, or how are they doing. And we always have it's just a tendency to, well, quite a lot of parents. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think?
So the thing is, fortunately, unfortunately, society is set up in such a way that there is always competition, right? So we have to excel and to move forward in anything that we do as adults. And that competition gets started at the very early stages in life. I'm not sure if this is the right way to do it, but this is how our society is set up. And it's unfortunate because I think a lot of times it puts so much pressure, undue pressure on our kids, because they're always comparing or being compared to somebody else. So as a parent, we might say, oh, Chunuki, Chunu to ye karta hai, right? He's like top of the class, where are you? And that sort of comes back to the kid and puts that pressure. Now, we need to look at certain things, how the kid is performing. Are they accomplishing the goals that the teacher has put up, saying that, okay, you need to have this, 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 and this done. And that is how they're giving you a report card. Now, that report card is a benchmark that they have created based on what their curriculum is. Has the child mastered that curriculum? But you're also comparing that kid to those other 25 children that are in the room that are then being used to look at how well they have mastered. So when you're comparing the two kids, if that other kid has done 100% of the mastery and your child has only done 75% of the mastery, what are the issues that come up? But we as a parent or we as society say that child is not up to par or is not as good as somebody else. So when you're looking at what the child is doing and how they're coming across with those marks when they come back and how you react to it is important for the parents to understand and know how to deal with it. So my thoughts are that, yes, push your child a little bit, make sure that they're doing what they need to do. But at the end of the day, if they're not able to be at that level where Chunnu or Munnu was at 100% and your child is only getting 85%, work with the child to make sure that there's no other impediment that they're having.
That leads to a question that we have received. What could be the early sign we could observe, notice in our children as a trait of needing extra help in education?
So there, once again, I think when we get questions, we can only answer them with limited information. So every child wants to excel. Every child wants to do well. Every child wants that positive reinforcement from their parent, from their society, and from their friend. No child intentionally wants to do poorly. So you as a parent are sitting there with the child. The child comes home, shows you what they have done at school. The child shows you, their homework. You sit down with them and you help them across. And every time that you help the child with the homework and the child takes that back, if they're not able to finish their work, if they're not able to understand the work, if they're not able to master the curriculum, then there may be something wrong. And as a parent, we need to make sure that we then look for issues that may have popped up, issues that may be impeding the child's understanding or desire to excel. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? So there's kids who may not do well because they actually have a quote unquote special need. And that is where then as a parent, you need to make sure that you get them evaluated.
Agreed. There is nothing wrong in providing our child that extra help, that extra bit that they might need at some point of their life, if they do. How to differentiate between normal academic underachievement versus a learning disability? Dr. Naveen, it's a broad topic, but it's something that parents just overall wants to understand.
Right. And I think I'm glad that somebody's asking that question because they're actually attuned to the fact that there is something called learning disability, right? So learning disability is a medical issue, is a developmental issue where the child is not able to perform. It is something that is out of control of the child. Underachievement is where the child may not be putting or applying themselves to the extent that they need to apply, and that is something that is behavioral. So if there is a concern that the child has a learning disability, then they need to come in to a center or meet up with a specialist who can evaluate and assess the child. And how many times at our center, our special needs center, that we have seen parents coming in because they were referred for the child being underachieving. Right? Many times we've gone into schools and given lectures where we've talked about, learning disabilities. So if you have been working with the child has been doing as much as they possibly can, yet they're not able to grasp the concept, then that child needs to be evaluated for a learning disability.
Yeah, so it's not that difficult. If a lot of schools nowadays have been noticing, they've been referring kids if they feel, and it's no harm in giving that extra bit, and then the child excels to any limits in whatever they are good at. So yeah, there are many things out there available to figure out and distinguish between a learning disability and just generally having.
Yeah, and just to get back on that, I think parents shy away. They get very scared because they quote unquote fear that, oh my God, my child is going to have a label. But what you need to understand is if the child does in fact have a label, then that label may help the child because special accommodations can be put into place and you can make it easier or make it a better environment for the child to learn and for the child to excel. So why would you not go ahead and do that? Why would you not try to find out if you have high blood pressure or if you have some sort of a heart disease? Because you want to be proactive. You want to go ahead and take care of how you can take care of that situation.
I'm sure, very true. So don't shy out in getting that little help if they need so. Dr. Naveen, a very interesting another question is how important is sports and extracurricular activity for our child? Are less interest in sports and physical activity a symbol of tough time in studies for a child, or is it just a myth?
Okay, so there are a bunch of questions that are intertwined in here, and I think yeah, parents have these questions all the time. In this day and age, parents are running right after school from one activity to the other, to the other, to the other, right? So 5 days a week or 6 days a week, their child is being pulled right out of school, being fed in the car or being fed in wherever else. And then they have to be meeting up with their tutor, they have to be meeting up with their dance teacher, they have to be meeting up with their Kumon teacher, or whatever it is, they're running from one place to the other. So that, I think a lot of that is societal pressure. Some of it may be for the enjoyment of the child, but when you're putting that pressure on the child to go ahead and take them from one activity to the other, that may be too much. So you have to gauge your child and understand, is this of their interest or not? And do you really need to have 6 days a week of activities? Just because your neighbor's kid is taking activities 5 or 6 days a week, your child may do much better with just 2 activities, after school activities. And once again, the activities should be based on the interest of the child. So you can, as a parent, impose your desires on the kid, but if the kid doesn't have the personality or the liking to do it, the child will not succeed. So if your child is not built well athletically, if they don't have an interest in sports, or if they have a very strong interest in sports, you will have to gauge that interest as a parent and then go ahead and take them for the activity. So if they're good in sports and they like sports, let them excel in it, because that is somewhere where they will feel more confident when they come out of that sport activity, because they would have made a huge accomplishment. But if you're constantly putting your child into a sport and they're not able to perform, and you're telling him, oh, you have to excel in soccer, and you keep on slogging the child and telling them, nahi jana hai, jana hai, jana hai, and they have to go, then that kid is not going to do well. That kid is not going to be happy, and that kid is going to reflect the what do you call failure, not just in sports, but in many different aspects of their lives.
Yeah, true that. So we shouldn't be pressurizing and let our kids try a little bit of everything and see what they really enjoy doing and take it with the flow. Dr. Naveen, how can parents help nurture the social and the emotional development of their children?
So one of the most important aspect of that answer is to make sure that you at the home environment have an open communication with your child. You as a parent ensure that you are looking at the cues of the child. How is the child reacting to you? Are they able to be happy around you? Are they looking for you to engage in activities with you? And how are you reacting to the child, right? So if your child is happy at home, then they will be happy in other aspects of life. So if there's constant, domestic issues that are happening, if there are constant pressure from the parent to the child, and always, the parent coming in and being authoritarian and telling them, ye kar, wo kar, wo kar, wo kar, wo kar, it's always a directive that's coming from the parent. And no matter what the child says, and the child goes back to the parent, and the parent just cuts them down, then that child is not going to have a good rapport with the parent, and their social communication skills will not develop properly. So their behavior will be impacted by their home environment. And as we said, I think in the very beginning, or in some of the other discussions we've had, we've said COVID is now a time where families can actually bond with each other, right? So yes, we are, before pre-COVID, we were constantly running around. Now we're forced to be in that home environment with our kids. We're forced to interact with them in many different ways. Make it a happy time. Make it a time when you can learn to communicate with your kid.
One of the questions that just popped up, it says, Doctor, if a child is good at memorizing the things but poor in writing, will that be categorized as learning disability? According to me, guys, no, let's not put a label just because let's make sure that proper testing is done if it's a repetitive area or behavior. But I would like Dr. Naveen to also comment on that.
True. I mean, at this point, I think, because we've been doing this work for so long and, you're an expert just as much, what needs to be done is, evaluating the handwriting skills of the child. Why is the child not able to write properly? That needs to be assessed. And then how is the child able to put their thoughts onto paper? Are they able to verbalize? Are they able to communicate? Is that the issue? And another aspect to look at is how's their visual, right? How are their visual abilities? Are they able to go ahead and copy or look at the blackboard? Are they able to go ahead and understand the information that's coming in? So it's not just about one thing, right? So the neuronal pathways, or if you get into that terminology, right? You have sensory input that comes in. Is the sensory input coming in correctly? How's the processing? How's the cognition? Are they able to process the information correctly? And effector, the motor, how are they able to, literally spit out that information after they have processed it? So the testing needs to be done at all of those levels to understand. So, the child may be smart, the child may have the proper IQ, the child has every other aspect, but if there is a defect at any of those levels, that child then needs help, because that is a deficiency that the child has, which is out of their control, and we can go ahead and help them. And if we take care of that aspect, then the child will do really well.
Agreed, totally agreed. So let's not label and jump to conclusion. One should just go through the series of it, observe, get the testing done, and then look into it and give the child the proper help that's needed. Dr. Naveen, my kid goes to a school in which they strongly believe in joy of learning. They build the atmosphere around them, which gives a child a motivation to internally motivates the child to enjoy learning. And I feel it's a very which is very great, and I feel it's a very important aspect in the early years of a child's development. And how important is it to emphasize everyone that we should make sure and not make it a burden for our kids? They should love learning, and which is in the early years one of the most important um, aspect according to a lot of us.
Right. So there are many different types of teachings that can happen, right? So one is the authoritarian type of teaching, where the kids are sitting there in class and the teacher is just spitting out lectures and saying, A for apple, B for boy, C for cat, you have to learn it. Then there is an aspect where the child has to learn through play. And we believe that play environment is the best environment for the child to have, because the child is feeling comfortable, the child is exploring, the child is being happy with what they're being given, and they're using their mind creatively to go ahead and understand the concepts that they have been taught. So if you're giving child some clay, what is the child doing with the clay? Are you introducing some science concepts to it? Are you teaching them how to mold and fine arts with it? Are you teaching them how to be ambidextrous, or preferring one aspect of your hand versus the other? So you're looking at all of that in a very different environment. So that environment makes the child feel that they are being in control, that they are actually enjoying. And then when they come back to you with what they have created or what they have learned, the reinforcement that you have given to them is critical at that point. So the child can make something and the child brings it to you and you say, oh my God, this is terrible. Or you can say, oh my God, let's see what you have made and how you made it. What is the color of this clay? What is the shape of this clay? What is it how does it relate to what you have seen outside in the real world? And you or the parent or the teacher, whoever it is bringing those concepts back to the child, and that is what makes learning fun. Can you imagine sitting there and just sitting there with an open book and just having to read and having to digest that information and spit it back out? How boring is that? So,
Right. We've been having tons of questions and we're running out of time. We will try to cover all your questions right after the session, and we will get back to you all. I will take last two questions, Dr. Naveen. After the COVID-19, kids have to go back to school. What do you see? Any challenges in that? And how do the parents and the children have to prepare themselves? And another question, which is correlating to this, is also that as they cannot go out during this time, it's very difficult for parents to put them and make them focus to sit at one spot and study now that the schools in India have reopened.
right. So I think this is a very big topic in itself to talk about. And there's going to be some very loose guidelines that I'll give you, but the rest will have to come as a directive from the policymakers that are there in India, how they're reopening the school, how they're allowing how many kids are in the school and so on in terms of social distancing and in terms of how do you control the spread of the virus. So all of those instructions are going to be coming in from your policymakers, and I will not go ahead and comment on those. We have to make sure we teach our kids proper hygiene. We have to make sure we teach them about masks and social distancing, and making it as palatable to our kids and society as a whole, how they can interact with other kids, because social learning is a key aspect of learning in kids. So when they're so isolated, we have to find different ways of bringing them together with their friends and bringing them together with other people so that they can continue to function as normally as possible. So obviously using video conferencing to the point where they can. Obviously, you as a family, as an entity, interacting with your child as much as you can. Trying to pull in cousins and close friends who you know have not been exposed to COVID, maybe for one-on-one play dates, whatever is allowable by the policymakers in India, you would go ahead and do that. But once again, even if they are coming over, you need to keep on reinforcing clean hygiene with our kids, making sure they're washing their hands, making sure they're covering their faces whenever they can, and controlling the spread of the virus.
One of the last questions, I think I'll try to there are many questions out there. We will, like I said, we'll try to cover them all soon. One of the things that parents are struggling, Dr. Naveen, is that during the COVID-19 time, right now in India, the school is online. Of course, we're not going back to school at this point. So during this time, the children spending hours and hours on electronic devices for online classes. And then later there are complaints from kids about headache, about eye ache. So what are the measures? Can parents do something to prevent that? Is there any kind of splashing with cold water is what I remember from old times. But is there anything else that you would want to give out to parents? Because everything is online and we don't have a choice, whether it's extracurricular or whether it's studying.
Right. So unfortunately, it is a situation which I think the entire world is dealing with. And we're trying to adapt to whatever we possibly can that works for us, for our kids, for society as a whole. So our kids are being told to sit on video conferencing on media to learn. And there have been lots of different policies that have come in the past where we say control media time, make sure that you don't expose your kids to media. But in this situation, the media time that is being used for educational purposes that is required would not be counted as media time. The rest of the other time that they're there should not then be dedicated to total media. And we as a parent have to enforce those guidelines and make sure that the child is not on the computer or on the TV as soon as they get done from classes. Now, if they are being, if they're getting headaches, if they're getting, constant eye strain, yes, try to go ahead and look off of the screen. Try to go ahead and take a break wherever you can. Cold water is fine. let the kid have a break and then come back and finish off their work. If the child is having a lot of headaches, you really want to understand why that is the case. You want to make sure there is not a visual problem, myopia or any other eye defects. So you may need to get that checked from your, from your specialist to ensure that we're not dealing with anything more. So, we all hope that we can walk through this path together and hopefully see the light at the end of the tunnel when Corona will be something that we'll be learning about in textbooks and not experiencing it firsthand.
Like Dr. Naveen said, we're going to conclude our session with the keynotes, keeping in mind that we're here to help our kids. We don't have much choices left but to have our kids. I know I've been seeing pouring of questions on one thing right now. Everything is about media. School is about media. Parents are having a tough time. But like Doc said, we can limit other time for other activities on social media or on any kind of gadgets, and focus on the school time that they have to put in. And hopefully we're all going to be back to reality in few months and everybody will be safe and sound. So guys, we're going to end today's session. Just a request for anybody who would like to have send us pre-questions for our next session. 5, please email it to us at mwcgk2@gmail.com. Thank you very much for your time and see you all next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.